show with myself and Cheryl. Hello, Cheryl. Nice
Hi,
to see you.
Steven. How are you? Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Indeed, thanks for joining us today. It's always exciting when you actually start a new show because you don't know exactly what's going to happen. So we've no idea what's going to happen in the next 30 minutes, but we hope that you can join in and comment and get to know what the show is about. And we'd like to give an introduction to the show as to the sort of topics we're going to be talking about today, Cheryl.
Well, we are going to be talking about when we go live, being genuine with the audience and speaking from the heart and being who you are. And all of those things are important because it's the bottom line. I feel it's really all about how you make people feel. That's that connection that's happening.
Truly, and it is brilliant because we can reach out to the screen, we can reach across the world, and we can get people involved in the show. And to everybody who's watching at the moment, this is a new show. You can help shape it. We'd welcome your questions and comments during the next 30 minutes, and just welcome. So let's start with knowing who you are. Now, this seems like but we don't. It's not knowing. Well, I'll give you my interpretation first. Now we'll come from there. Knowing who you are is knowing, basically, playing to your strengths. Talk about things that you know about. Be genuine, and reach out to people. And Alfredo's joined us. Hello, Alfredo. And it's a new show. Hello, Catherine.
Hi, Alfredo. Hi, Catherine.
It's nice to see you both. So, knowing who you are. Where do we begin with that, Cheryl?
Well, I put this down because there are a lot of people doing live streaming and they're doing a lot of great things and we're learning a lot from them. And so my reasoning for putting down knowing who you are, and just like you said, working with your strengths and knowing what they are. And I guess the reason I put this is I wanted people to not try to imitate someone else, because so many times you think, wow, that person's doing great, and you start to imitate them, or you kind of try to do their thing, whatever it is they do. And it doesn't come across authentic. It doesn't come across genuine because you're trying to be someone else and you're not relaxing into who you really are.
So it's being who you are as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Trying to get across your views and being genuine in doing so. And we said earlier, because we talked a little bit about before the show, that you actually need to listen to people, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. Listening is key.
Yeah. Right. So knowing who you are and then speaking genuinely. Now, you talked a moment ago about imitating other people, and you can't do that if you're being genuine, because you have to be yourself when you're
Exactly.
live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that, it's finding out what your thing is and, how you are going to connect and relate with the audience. I'll just use myself as an example. I'm all about the heart. I'm all about talking about the heart energy, putting it out there and sending that love out to the world, sending kindness and compassion. Those are the big things that I talk about. I talk a lot about forgiveness. And so when people come and listen to my show, which is Heart Mind Conversations with Cheryl Piper, and then I also started a new show a few weeks ago with a co-host, and that is Messages of the Heart. And we're talking about and unpacking these things, and people can feel us. There's a connection of feeling and understanding that what's being spoken is genuine, and it comes through with caring and compassion. And so that's kind of what I was talking about with that and speaking from the heart. Whatever it is you do. If you listen to RJ talk about bots, can't you feel it? She loves what
It's
she's doing.
true. It is sharing a passion, isn't it?
It
So
is.
you've got the knowledge, you've got something you actually love doing, and you know it's of benefit to other people, and you want to reach out and let people know. You want to shout it from the rooftops. You want to sort of champion your cause and get people involved. And Catherine's saying lots of heart there, Cheryl.
Oh, thank you, Catherine. And that's just it. You want to get out there, and with me, my whole purpose in what I do is that I know there are a lot of people out there that are in pain, and they, haven't forgiven the issues of the past. They haven't let go of those issues from the past. They're dragging that weight around with them. And so my goal is to put my message out there to as many people as possible so that they know there's someone out there that can talk to them from the heart and can help them to move into forgiveness and into a whole new life and a whole new way of thinking and being. And so that's why I do what I do.
Right. Where does the process start?
Where does the process start? Go ahead, Stephen.
Let's talk about the course that you have, which is the Art and Science of Communication in Conversation. Where does the process start?
And the Art and Science of Communication and Conversation is a course that I have available on my website and also on my Facebook page. It's just a webinar that's an online workshop that you can take. And what it's about is about connecting with people in conversation, because it was a report I read a few months ago, and it was from Stanford University, and it was talking about how 9 out of 10 conversations miss the mark, meaning we're just not communicating. Yeah, I know your eyes go up, Stephen. Isn't that an awful statistic? It
is.
It's an awful statistic. And what's happening is we think that we're communicating in conversations because people maybe are nodding their head or they seem to be in agreement, and you walk away. One person maybe thinks, wow, that was a great conversation. And the other person's going, oh, what were they talking about?
Well, that is, out of politeness, we're taught that you should listen, because listening is a skill. It's a learned skill, and most people, you've got to learn to listen to other people. And if you do listen and you reply, then you're having a conversation. If you don't listen and reply, then you're just ignoring the person stood in front of you, and you're missing an opportunity, aren't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And in this course that I have, it goes into a lot of neuroscience, because there's a lot going on in our brain when we're having a conversation. And there can be different factors that can contribute to whether we're communicating or not. Because when people, like you and I are having a conversation right now, and we are listening and speaking, and we're co-creating, we're in a space of connection. And so that means we're speaking from that prefrontal cortex area, that executive brain. But if I were to say something, then you deemed it to be a threat, when you said something to me and I was taken back, there's a part of the brain called the amygdala that its job is to protect us. It's a primitive area of the brain. Its job is to protect us. And we can be in conversations with people, and things can be said, and that amygdala can stand up and deem there is a threat happening to that person. And then it goes into what's called an amygdala hijack. And when that happens, all communication is pulled in very, very tightly, because you're in a threat mode. And what you're trying to do is get out of that threat. And you'll do one of 4 things. You'll do fight, flight, freeze, or appease in that situation, just to get yourself removed from it. And so the conversation and communication between you and the other person has been kind of shut down when someone is in that state. And so I talk about that a lot in that course. I know that was a lot.
No, I don't. I'm good. I was just trying to fight, flight,
freeze, or appease.
So I want to get that on the screen. So bear with me a moment, people.
That's fine.
So fight, flight, freeze, or appease.
Appease, yes.
I'm also trying to get the spelling right too.
Well, and when we're in these situations, I mean, a good example of, say, appease would be if you're in a situation, say you're called into your boss's office and he or she is upset with you for something they thought you did, and they are just kind of letting you know how upset they are. And if you get thrown into the amygdala hijack in that moment, that situation, you're probably going to appease because you just want to get out of their office and get on with your day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you want to run away.
Yeah, you want to just, yes, whatever you say, yes, and then you want to get out of there and move on with your day. And so these type of things, and recognizing that you can be, like me, myself, can be thrown into an amygdala hijack, or someone else can be during a conversation, and recognizing those things and being able to use certain terms to be able to help to soothe that amygdala so that that person steps back into a space of trust, and then you can have a conversation again.
Does that cross over into when we're doing live videos?
Well, it can. Let's say we have a guest on,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe something is said, and that guest could be triggered, or that the person listening to you and commenting could be triggered by something that you've said that perhaps you didn't mean that way, but that's how they heard it. Because we can only control what we say and put things out with the most kind and compassionate intentions. We cannot control how someone hears it, because we all view through our window of perception.
Totally, because tone is everything, isn't it?
It is.
The way that you actually say something can be. I mean, I'll just give you for an example here. I go to Germany, and I enjoy going over there, and they're wonderful people. But when they say something, you think they're shouting because of the tone which they're actually using. And if you were live with somebody and the tone was one of being authoritarian or telling you to do something, then you would back off, wouldn't you?
It could do, you're correct. That's a good example. It could throw someone into that threat mode and go, whoa, what's going on here? What am I hearing? What did I do? What does this person want from me?
Yeah, I've got a question from Catherine, but I'll come back in a moment. But how do you change the window of perception, Cheryl?
Well, how I change my window of perception, because that's the only thing I can change. I certainly can't change anyone else's window of perception. That's up to them to choose how they're going to view something. And that statement that I just made is key to understand that we can choose how we see something. It's bringing that responsibility of choice back on ourselves, and understanding that we can choose to see things one way, or we can choose to see it another way. Because there are times when people will say to me things like, well, that person offended me. And I say, wow, that's a lot of power to give to someone, because no one has the power to offend me. I can simply choose to be offended. That's how I look at that. And it doesn't mean I don't ever choose to be offended. I just realize that I chose it. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. We're good. And Catherine's saying, my family tells me that I take everything incorrectly from the way they intended it. So I'm going to be general on this. The problem is miscommunication is also a learned skill, because you can actually miscommunicate what you're trying to get across to people, can't you?
Mm-hmm.
And the reaction is based on the person's emotion at the time, and what we're expecting from people. If you're a person, I don't want to go case on case, but rescue me, please, Cheryl.
Oh, okay. Well, in saying what you're saying, yes, that miscommunication, and that comes back, what you were saying, it really does come back to looking at that amygdala hijack, because that's what's happening. That when people are seeing things a certain way, and it's not the way that you intended it to be, there's a way that you can then in turn have a conversation, and it's a lot of asking questions, like, well, what did you hear me say? And what how does that how does that affect you and what you're thinking in for that situation? There's and those type of things are geared to help bring that person back into a conversation, to actually have, you could, because you're respecting their thought process. There's times when, I mean, we all do it, where we miscommunicate with people, and someone will say something, and it'll be, I'll be like, I didn't say that. Wow, I wonder what they're hearing, you know? And so then I feel like it's my job to clarify that, because so many times, I'm going to go back to what you said earlier about that skill of listening, and that it truly is a skill. And a lot of people don't think about that. I have a book that I read years and years ago. It was called How to Speak and How to Listen. And it talks about how when we go through our learning process growing up through our schooling, that we're taught a lot of things. One of them is not listening. That it's not one that a lot of time is spent for us to learn. I'm an auditory learner. You know, you're either a visual learner, an auditory, or a kinesthetic. I'm an auditory learner. So listening is very important to me. And speaking and words and hearing, those are very important to me. And so I learned that skill early. And it is a skill. So thank you for sharing it. Oh, I went off on a tangent here, didn't I?
No, you're good. You're good. And Catherine is saying, yeah, I've got an echo. Hopefully it will go in a minute. If you're watching, and you are watching, and thank you, if you can hear an echo, say, because I'm getting an echo and I can hear myself, so excuse me for a moment. And Catherine's saying, yeah, I often ask for clarification, you get frustrated, but oh well, I've got to ask. And maybe, well, do you want to take this, Cheryl? Catherine's saying, maybe I'm not listening well. I'll consider this more, thanks.
Well, I mean, that's a great point, because I know I've asked myself that question as well. You know, maybe I'm not listening well, and so therefore I need to stop and clear my mind. And this is where, you know, I teach meditation as well. I teach mindfulness, and to be able to clear the mind and to have the mind open to listening to what's really happening. And this is a skill again. You know, this reminds me of the show I just did, because the show I just did 2 hours ago, it was titled, Do the Thoughts You Think Really Matter? And it's about this. It's about moving into thinking how we want to move forward with our life, and thinking in a positive direction and making those choices. And like what Catherine is saying, you know, listening. And that listening is going to create our response to be more positive to the situation.
What part does empathy play?
What part does empathy play? Okay, when I speak about empathy, I do speak about it differently than a lot of people do. And so is it okay if I share that thought?
Of course it is. Yes, that's what we're here. That's why we're here. That's why we're
okay. Well, I'd like to say that first. You'll notice that I use the word compassion a lot. Have you noticed that, Steven?
Yes.
That when I speak, I talk about compassion. And when you look at the word empathy, empathy is actually going down and putting yourself in that situation with someone else. You're actually kind of crawling into the hole with them and saying, I understand how you feel, and I'm here with you. Whereas compassion is the word I tend to use instead of empathy, because compassion is saying, I hear you, I understand where you are, I'm right here sending you positive energy, and I'm ready to help when you're ready. And so it's me holding my energy or frequency at that space of courage and love and willingness and acceptance, rather than me actually lowering my energy into fear and anger and despair and guilt. Because when I lower my energy into that to say, I understand, or I'm right here with you, now we're both down in the hole. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, yeah.
So if I can stay at compassion and bring compassion into the situation for that person, whatever it is, then I'm holding a space for them. And maybe that's not what you were saying, but that's where I
No,
go
no,
when I
no,
hear
no,
the word
no.
empathy.
It's just basically, if from my way of looking at it, if you find somebody in a situation that you have been in before, then you can empathize with them from the point of view you know exactly what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you said, what you don't want to do is lower yourself back into that situation, but your memories of that situation can help somebody else because you can give them the not the well, you can give them a key to actually for them to move forward.
Yes, and know that you're there with your hand out, ready to help when they're ready to move forward. Because we can't answer things for other people. We can help them. We can let them know we understand the situation. We could give them guidance as to what we did in the situation, but it's ultimately up to them to choose to step forward out of that situation. Once again, it's bringing that responsibility back to ourselves. And that's a hard one because sometimes people don't want to do that. And that's just the truth. I talk a lot about victimhood. I talk a lot about the ego and victimhood and how that ego will pull us down into that muck quicker than anything.
True. We've covered a lot of ground in 20 minutes. Right. Okay. I think we're on the same wavelength, which is good. And I think that the fight, flight, freeze, or appease has hit home. I'm going to go with that.
Well, and that really comes from those primitive days of, like I said, the amygdala is primitive. It's like, is what kept us alive, allowed us to survive, getting us away from the saber-toothed tiger chasing us, whatever, so that we could, move on with our life. And so,
Sure.
but that's still there, and that's the amygdala is still being activated, and it is activated over anything that it deems to be a threat. It's constantly scanning for threats.
John is saying that I've got an echo. So, right. Okay. Very good. Right, now, we're going to do the unusual here. We're going to combine our original discussion and switch it over to tech.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm good. I'm
Yes.
only teasing. That was one of the ideas that we actually came up with when we were starting the show, because we all have our own areas of expertise, don't we? And we were talking earlier about playing to your strengths. So when you're actually going live, it's best that you actually have knowledge of what you're talking about, and you can therefore, as we said about RJ earlier, you can actually champion it and be passionate about it and reach out to people and draw people into the screen. We know people who are good at doing that, like Mr. Jeff Adams and Molly Mahoney. They are well. They can create a situation, can't they?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And you want to listen to what they have to say. You're drawn into that conversation.
And what is the key behind that? Is that a learned skill, do you think? Yeah, left field question.
I'm sure it could be, but I think it also has to do with what we said at the beginning, is when you find your passion, it just naturally flows from you. And so therefore, those things that we're talking about, they come through because we're speaking of something that we know. We're speaking of something that we love. We're speaking of something that we have a great deal of passion for. And so it's just very natural for it to come out. I mean, yes, we have to study and we have to know what we're talking about, but it's very natural to come through because we have passion for it.
And that's, I suppose I can see where that comes from. And being totally involved in what you're doing as well, and believing it.
But you have to believe it.
If you can believe what you have to believe what you say, don't you?
Absolutely. Because that's your skill, that's your gift. And that's what I call it. It's like we are all on here doing this live streaming, and we're sharing our gifts. We're sharing our gifts that we came to this world to share, whatever that is. And so when you say, I'm going back to that question of, is this learned? Because we can learn about presentation skills. We can learn about communication skills, just as I talked about one of my programs that I have. We can take all of those are the learning process. But when it actually comes out and that flow happens on a live stream, it's because we have passion for it. We've taken all of those skilled things and brought them together into sharing a message. So I guess it's both.
It is, yeah, and that's what live video is about. It's all about. It's about sharing a message and doing it in such a way that people can buy into that, and they can join in and engage and comment and ask questions and have an experience. I mean, a show works best when everybody who's involved in it, that's whether you're on screen or in the chat, is actually taking part. That's where the magic happens. It's when everybody gets involved and starts to interact. And that's why I love live video, and that's why I do all these shows, because I actually enjoy being live on air. And I'm just fortunate in the great friends that I've made by doing this, because we're actually part of a larger network, aren't we?
Absolutely.
People who all have passion about what we talk about.
Exactly. And I love being part of the Be Live family. Oh my goodness. So much love, really, and willingness to help each other. Everybody's about helping each other grow. Everybody's about helping each other to be successful. I love that in our community.
I think that's the magic of BeLive.tv and the community that they've built, and giving us the ability to go live whenever we want is just amazing. Right. Okay. There we have it.
Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. That was, I just, if I could say one thing before we wrap this up, I'm gonna say what I started saying at the beginning, and that is that it's all about how you make people feel. That's what it's about. And so take that passion that you have and share your gift with the world, because there is someone out there who needs to hear your message.
Wise words. I totally enjoyed the last half hour. It's just flown by. And thank you to Catherine. And Catherine's going to watch the replay as well, and to Barbara and to Alfredo and to my friend John. Now, I know that John and I have been doing the show together for today. Today we did our 144th show together.
Wow.
Which we're heading towards the 3 years before Christmas. And he and I have a tradition, which I think we should carry on, is that I do the introduction to the show and he does the outro. So in that spirit, would you like to do the outro to the show, Cheryl?
Thank you so much, Steven. And this has been a fantastic half hour. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined us live, everyone who's joining us on the replay. Please continue to put your comments in the comment area, because we really want to correspond with you and know what you think. And so thank you, and sending much love and compassion to everyone.
Thank you for watching. Oh, I've got to feature that on the screen. Barbara, it's our pleasure, and we'll be back. And this was a wonderful show. All the best. So, Barbara, thank you. Cheryl and I say thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
We will return, and we'll see you all again. Bye for now.